Hello and welcome to Still Irish, Ireland's new podcast of record. My name is Killian Foley-Walsh, and if you don't stop going through my bins, I'll have to call the cops. I'm delighted to be joined by Paddy Cullivan for this week's episode. Paddy is a noted historical entertainer and musician. But before we get to chatting to Paddy, I want to get some mushy stuff out of the way. I want to thank a benefactor who was asked to remain anonymous, but I don't think I'll give much away by saying thank you, Jack. Who noticed how uncomfortable Nick and I were in the chairs that we were in the last time, the Guantanamo style chairs that we had to endure. And so he has decided that neither Paddy nor any of our future guests should be subject to that kind of indignity, and has kindly donated these nice office chairs that we're sitting at the moment. So thank you very much, Jack. With that out of the way, Paddy, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
We had the crack at Kilkenny.
We did indeed. We met for the first time just last Saturday, but didn't we hit it off?
Yes,
and I,
yes.
I converted you to chicken and waffles.
Chicken and waffles in the Pembroke Bar. That was very good. Yeah, I did a show down there as part of Kilkenomics, David McWilliams and Nisha Nunn's, Kilkenny man Nisha Nunn's brainchild, bringing economists and comedians together.
How did that go for you? You had a show on the Saturday, I think.
Yeah, I did a show on the Saturday. I do kind of one-man historical entertainment shows, which are like 300 slides, songs, on a subject like the murder of Michael Collins or the murder of Wolfe Tone, or one about a united Ireland called I Can't Believe It's Not Ireland. But this show I did for Kilkenomics is because basically I've run out of ideas. So I just took all the satirical songs, or the biggest non-hits I had over the last 25 years, and told the story of Ireland, its economy, because a lot of those songs are about the economy. So in 2010, I brought out an EP called We Are Where We Are, which is what everyone on the radio kept saying after the financial crash. You know, you were trying to find out how it had happened and what had happened, and some fella would come on Radio 1 and go, "Oh, well, we are where we are. That's it now." And in other words, they were trying to shut down the conversation about how it had happened or how we had got here. You know, I had another song called Turning the Corner. In fact, a lot of the songs I did were based on Irish political phrases like shoulder to the wheel. We've lost the run of ourselves. And my favourite of all was going forward. Every Fianna Fáil politician was saying going forward at the time.
I didn't realise I had PTSD. But
no, you do have PTSD from it.
I do.
And then the big second disaster of the last 25 years was, of course, COVID. Whereas I like to say I was bankrupted twice as a musician. So I took Dara O'Leary saying COVID loves to party, it does. I sampled it and turned it into a massive techno tune. So I had everybody down in Kilkenny raving out to COVID loves to party.
Yeah. In wet pubs, I hope.
In wet
pubs.
The wet pubs, outdoors. And of course the image I had was, of course, the embrace, the greatest love story of the last 10 years, the love between a pangolin and a bat, which was what we were told was the cause of COVID. Until we found out that it wasn't. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, well, God almighty. I didn't have COVID on my bingo card for this evening, but the sort of thing that we're trying to put to the back of our memories, I suppose. But,
well, it's funny. You know, Guy Biner is a historian friend of mine who did a lot of work on the year of the French, knows a lot about 1798, but he did a book on the Spanish flu. And he said that after the Spanish flu was gone, everyone did exactly the same thing they did with COVID, which is they never talked about it again. They just wanted to put it to the back of their mind and go back to normal life. So the early 1920s, the Spanish flu, though it had killed 50,000 people in Ireland, nobody talked about it. No. They just wanted to put it away.
Yeah,
well, that's what we've done.
I wouldn't be opposed to that here, to be honest. I think there was an article in the paper over the week about long COVID and people suffering from it and everything else, and all sorts of symptoms attached to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel sorry for people who are obviously still dealing with this sort of stuff, but at the same time, I don't particularly want to remember much of it myself.
No.
And as far as I know, I never caught COVID. I'm sure I felt sniffly in the course of the 100 years that it seemed to last, but I certainly never had a test.
Despite living outdoors for 2 years, I still caught it 3 times. But I'm glad I caught it naturally. And but the one thing I did use COVID to show, and it was something I show in a lot of my work, is that the Irish predilection towards, how would I call it, love for authority, love for some kind of organised religion. So I have a song called The Church of COVID. And I mentioned that the Archbishop, Tony Holohan, and Father McConkey and Father Trendy, the trendy priest Luke O'Neill with the guitar.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
and so the plastic bubbles and everything else.
All very Father Ted stuff. So the Irish love a religion they can adhere to. So we got rid of Catholicism, but then we took on COVID. We loved COVID. we love the environment. So I do have a kind of have a picture of Greta Thunberg's face superimposed on the Robert Balla painting of Archbishop John Charles McQuaid. So it always gets a bit of a laugh. You know what I mean? So I think I'm an anarchist more than anything else, but I see these patterns throughout Irish history, and one is, you know, when we all take something on, and the Irish more than anybody else, we take on something and we go for it 100% more than anybody else. That's just how we are.
Yeah.
And I'm always naturally suspicious of it.
Well, long may it continue, says I. But I suppose it reminds me of something that you said when we were enjoying our food on Saturday. You mentioned that you had been a ardent Sinn Féin voter since about 1992, I think you said.
Yeah.
Up until a couple of years ago. And it sounds like the couple of years ago might have been roughly coincidental with COVID. Is that the case, or am I off the wall?
It was not much to do with COVID, but it is definitely to do with Sinn Féin's move to the left. I have a strange background in that, you know, my dad's from Cavan. He's a classical composer, very much into history. We come from a kind of a Fianna Fáil background, but in the early 90s, I wouldn't have been voted. I mean, I liked Albert. I thought Albert was great for getting the peace process going. But obviously, as a young 18-year-old, I was voting for people like Daithí Doolan, and I would always give Sinn Féin a vote. I would always and people always said to me, well, why do you vote Sinn Féin? You know, you're a capitalist and you're this. And I said, yeah, but I think the more political power you give Sinn Féin, the more chance there is for the war to end, because the war was still going on at the time. So I really did believe that Sinn Féin needed political power more than anything else. And then I did, you know, we went through a very kind of capitalistic time with the Celtic Tiger, and it absolutely went south, as it did everywhere in the world. So I've always believed that there was a time maybe for Sinn Féin's policies to work like that, but I always believed that Sinn Féin were going to take over from Fianna Fáil. I never thought that they would turn to the left, as they have done in the last 2 years. And a lot of them are friends of mine and all of that, and I think Ona Brin's plans for housing are very good and all of that, and he's written a book on the thing, which I always think is a good start. But unfortunately, the left, you know, there's a lot of baggage that's coming with the left in the modern world. International socialism. I'm a nationalist, so I'm you know, people give out Micheál Martinez's phrase, narrow nationalism. And I go, but nationalism by its very nature has to be narrow. It just has to be. You're concerned with what's happening on this island, and that's it. And that's what I'm concerned with. And I find that the leaning towards international socialism, this kind of burgeoning world movement towards it, it's not helping. It just isn't. Because human nature, by its very nature, is it's socialist in terms of, we've plenty of socialist elements in Irish politics and in terms of how we distribute wealth and things like that. But, and of course, our mehel in Ireland is very important. But we are not socialists. We never have been. We've never achieved more than 25% in terms of all the socialist parties put together. So my ambition was that Sinn Féin was going to go and start encroaching from Fianna Fáil voters and become a very good on-the-ground political party that welcomed an awful lot of different views and viewpoints and ideas, and became a broad church party, which I think is I still think within Sinn Féin there's plenty of that. I think they're going to run into trouble in the next few years, because there's an adherence now to a very lefty idea, which is only 20% of the Irish will ever go for it. We even saw with Catherine Connolly. She only achieved 22% of the total electorate in the country. And that's kind of how it is here, because we're not. Irish people are conservative island people who want their own house on their own acre with their septic tank and the rest of it. We're just never going to buy the green stuff or the lefty stuff, even though we have one of the most lefty societies going.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, we don't like the badge or the name. We like to pretend that we're not that thing that we are. But we'll happily put in a lefty president, but we're never going to have a lefty government.
No, well, I think Catherine Connolly did get probably a higher share of the vote in South County Dublin than the Heather Humphreys campaign would have been happy with. Of course, she got a higher share of the vote everywhere, I suppose.
Well, of course, South County Dublin, where everybody's broke and has no money whatsoever,
exactly,
and live in tiny houses. This is the funny thing. I mean, it's a bit like the Zora Mandami thing in America. And I mean, I do remember the old socialist joke about, the rich lecturer living in £1 million house and his student saying to him, how can you call yourself a socialist, live in a house like this? And he goes, but I want everyone to live in a house like this. And of course, that has been achieved a lot in South County Dublin.
One person at a time.
One person at a time, yeah. With me at the front of the queue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm very cynical about all political movements, whether it be trickle-down economics on the right or utopian lefty dreaming on the left. But, I do think there's a healthy balance between the two. I do think you can't have one without the other. I do think you have to have innovation and tech and all this US money in this country, because we do not want to go back to running Ireland on Guinness and cattle. I remember when we ran this country on Guinness and cattle, believe it or not, and it was not a pretty sight.
No. One of the things that I found interesting, I think, about Sinn Féin in particular, and their pivot, as you said, to the left over the last... I suppose it's really come up with the last couple of weeks and months, is in relation to the flag. Now, you had a choice opinion for me when we were chatting on Saturday, I think, about the tricolour, how you prefer to see it replaced maybe with, what was it, with the harp on St. Patrick's Blue, the presidential standard, effectively. That's a better option.
It's actually the old, it's the old coat of arms of Ireland. One reason I like the harp is that it's a musical instrument, so that we'd be the only country in the world represented by a cultural artifact, okay? Which I think is hugely important for Ireland.
There are a few with AK-47s, so...
Yeah, we don't want those.
No.
Yeah, and that's another aspect of the thing I'm not into either. I am not backing this... we had an anti-colonial struggle here, but the anti-colonial struggle wasn't so that we could revert the entire world back to some kind of fantasy utopia that we believe existed before nasty English people and all the rest of it took over the world. I've studied enough history to know that empires have waxed and waned, including an incredible Arab empire that no one ever wants to talk about. You know what I mean? And these things, when Michael Collins, who I'm a real admirer of, and I shouldn't be because I come from an anti-treaty background, but the more I looked at Collins, he lived in London for 10 years, he worked in high finance, he wasn't trying to free Ireland so that we could go back to dressing as druids and all be fluent in Irish and, get rid of everything to do with England whatsoever. He realized we were part of a Western culture and a Western world. And he just wanted us to be able to run our own patch of that. Do you know what I mean? And he was full of respect for Irish culture and full of respect for that. But that's something that can happen in its own time. But it can't if we want to side with all these kind of destructive movements around the world and all these other elements, which I find they're kind of out of a 1960s playbook, this anti-colonial 1960s playbook that thinks that we once more over the breach and we'll just throw off colonialism. And you can't reverse the colony. We don't want to do it here. We have unionists and a million people in the north who feel that they're British. We want to have a united Ireland with them. I'm a big protagonist of that. But how can we say we want to have a united Ireland full of the disparate people, the Protestants and the Catholics and the nationalists and the people who think they're British, and then we don't want that. We want to reverse the colony, absolutely everywhere else, and make the whole place pure and turn America into the Navajo Nation again, or whatever the idea is coming up. We all have to live together on this small planet. Yeah. We have to. Yeah. So we have to stop blaming each other for the sins of 100 years ago or 200 years ago, because believe it or not, somebody else was doing the exact same thing, and it wasn't just a white issue, and it wasn't just a brown or black issue.
Yeah, well, I suppose even in that sense, the tricolour becomes, the symbolism of the tricolour is quite important. I mean, what you're espousing there is effectively what the tricolour stands for, which is the white being the piece between the green and the orange. Which is why I find it so interesting that now that a movement seems to have kind of sprouted up in the last couple of weeks or months to try and bring more tricolours to the public square, that Sinn Féin, or at least a lot of people associated with Sinn Féin, weirdly seem to have come out against it. I was driving up here, obviously, from Kilkenny earlier, and because of that, I have reason to drive through the likes of Rialto, up Cork Street to the Liberties, that sort of thing. And I have to say, it actually was quite impressive to see so many flags flying around the place. But what was quite funny is that I was listening to the radio earlier on for my sins, and Kieran Cuddihy, who's just taken over Liveline, was on speaking on Albert Callan's show about what was coming up on Liveline. And seemingly yesterday, a lady went on the national airwaves to tell us all how, quote unquote, enraged she felt at the sight of these tricolours, because, in her words, the the anti-immigrant hatred is fueling erections
Of tricolours.
of flags. I left that pause in deliberately.
Yes.
But fueling erections of flags across the country. And those are the exact words that were used on the radio this morning. And I just thought, this is off the wall, you know?
I know, but the schizophrenic nature of the Irish, Killian, will never shock me. So for the whole 70s and 80s, we were told that the Irish flag was a symbol of the IRA. And so it was a terrible thing then as well, remember? And then we had Italia 90, where everybody could wave as many Irish flags and paint their house green, white and orange if they wanted to. So we got the flag back, supposedly. We were told that the flag was back. I was quite insulted by that because I just thought, well, the flag is the flag. The flag isn't owned by anybody, nor can you turn it into a negative. Do you know what I mean? So I have negative issues about the flag because I think it's identity politics. That's why I don't like it. I don't like Ireland being divided into green and orange. If you look at 1798, you'll find a lot of the Republicans were Protestants, and you'll find, you know, the Orange Movement was only set up in 1795. It's far more complex than that. Yeah. It was a lovely idea. The tricolour was come up with by 4 French Republican women, busybodies in 1848, who gave it to Thomas Francis Meagher, who brought it over here. It had a red hand on it originally. Lovely. Look, it's grand and it served its purpose. And I don't want to insult both my narrow nationalist friends or my international socialist friends, which is where the split is in Sinn Féin now, by saying one or the other has to go. That's why I'm trying to make one flag for one people, which is the yellow harp on the blue background. Because as you know, the flag of the British royal family will have England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland. Ireland's represented by the yellow flag on the blue background because that was the symbol of the Kingdom of Ireland back in the day under Henry Grattan. But it's also, the yellow harp on the blue background is a symbol of the Republican President of Ireland, which in my show I do want to abolish as well, and bring back a monarchy. But, you know, we'll get to that stage when we get there. But the symbol, the yellow harp on the blue flag, is strangely, it's both a loyalist and a Republican symbol. So it's the only one we're ever going to agree on. And the tricolour, it has too much symbolism for unionists in the North. They think it represents the IRA, whether they're right or not. But then the Southern media did a good job of saying it represented the IRA for decades. And now they're saying the tricolour represents what? Immigrant-hating, narrow nationalists. Is that what it is now?
By and large.
Yeah, well, I mean, how that woman feels doesn't really matter. People can fly their flag if they want. I wouldn't be a supporter of it being used negatively, but what flag does she want to fly instead?
Exactly. None whatsoever. We've got beautiful lampposts in this country and they're fine the way they are.
Okay.
But it's interesting you bring up the presidency and wanted to abolish it. I was actually of that mind myself for a little while. But how could you look, I suppose, at the pomp and circumstance of yesterday and the inauguration of Catherine Connolly and not want to hold on to it, you know?
I don't know. Oliver Callan did do a very funny talk through of it today. That there are aspects of it, I mean, that are wonderful, and then aspects that look kind of old-fashioned. And I mean, here's what I hate. Every 7 years we have an election for someone whose role is very, very symbolic and not important and not political. And yet the 2 months of horrendous campaigning for this is some of the most political and horrendous and vituperative. They tear strips off each other. It's disgusting. We only had 2 of them this time round. But even in this one, we were told that Heather Humphreys doesn't speak enough Irish and she's too orange for Ireland, even though we're meant to be loving orange people and loving the whole deal. Again, what I find is that some of the hypocrisies that are inbuilt to this new turn to international socialism are the problem for me. That there are inbuilt issues with every argument you make. You want a 2-state solution somewhere else, but you want a 1-state solution here. You know, you want a fully multicultural Ireland with loads of people here, which is a wonderful idea. But then Heather Humphreys is too orange and doesn't speak Irish well enough. No. You see, within your own arguments, you're finding your own issues, and this is what I have a problem with. This one wasn't so bad compared to some of the ones in the past where the entire cast of the Dragon's Den tear strips off each other. They destroyed David Norris, who was a wonderful person, for something which I find very symbolic. And then in another way, I mean, I'm happy enough with it's like people would expect me then with my new kind of right wing attitude to be upset about Zoran Mamdani or upset about Catherine Connolly, and I'm not. No. In a sense, I just would prefer a president because I know she's a very nice person, but I'd prefer a president who was positive about America. I'm half American, so it's very important to me that Ireland doesn't keep talking out of both sides of its mouth about America.
Exactly, regardless of who's in charge.
Exactly.
It's in our interest to keep them on side.
And you know, America, there's plenty of flaws. We can see that. I've just did a tour of America in March. I can see where some of the infrastructural flaws are, but it's an incredible place, and it is the great experiment of the world in multiculturalism. So, you know, we really need to wake up and stop this endless negativity and somehow siding with forces in the world that really would not have our best interests at heart. No. Very easy from Ratdown Dunleary to say how you feel about world situations without it ever having to affect you. No. But and again, that's how people vote in those places. So you know, I just think a bit of realism has to come in. Mandami as well. I mean, everyone's going crazy about him coming in. Wait till he goes up against the New York Civil Service or the 55 or so people on the council. Yeah. He's going to find there's some great shows about that very issue, TV shows. And he's going to find it very tough to implement all his stuff as well. I hope it knocks the edges off him and he becomes a great New York mayor. I hope Catherine Connolly is a great president. I can't do anything about it.
No. It's funny enough, I discussed Mamdani a little bit with Nick last week, and I was very surprised to hear that he's only 31, which is the same age as I am.
Yeah. Same age as Michael Collins when he died as well.
Lovely. Yeah. So I have some catching up to do on all counts. You know? I've long thought that I've made it to this age and no Terminator has come back in time to take me out. So I must do nothing with my life.
But Killian, you're Fine Gaeler, let's be honest, right?
How dare you?
Well,
not in a long time.
No. Yeah, but you were, right?
I was.
Okay. We all know that all Fine Gaelers are born at the age of 31. Okay? Literally. It's the first joke in my Michael Collins show. It's like all Fine Gaelers, Michael Collins was born at the ripe old age of 31. It's just that you've already, how can I put it? I went through the stages of, you know, socialist, you know the old phrase they have, if you're a socialist, if you're not a socialist at 20, you have no heart. If you're still a socialist at 40, you have no head. You've just gotten there nice and quick, like all Fine Gaelers.
I suppose, yeah. Simon Benjamin Button Harris.
I would have wasted an awful lot of time. I'm jealous now of the guys who realize. Yeah. Look. There's loads of aspects of socialism I still believe in. I still think Ireland could have a great NHS system run by the National Lottery, a bit like the sweepstakes. I think free education is important. I think that universal basic income for the arts has actually been really good. They analysed it. Believe it or not, it's just that small amount of money it created more money. Yeah. I do have friends who don't agree with it, but I think, especially things like the arts, and a lot of young people I know today are just spending all their hours working for rent. So if you have any kind of help with that, I do believe it's the way forward. And let's be honest, once robotics and AI takes over, you're going to have an awful lot of artists out there. Yeah. Almost everyone's going to be an artist.
I wouldn't mind a universal basic income for podcasters, to be honest. I might get behind that.
Yes, but Sinn Féin have only just done a proposal that comedians should be able to benefit from the arts. They never did before, which I found incredible because they're some of the most creative people in Ireland. No. We've got a great comedy scene, but podcasters might come a close second.
Maybe. Yeah. But no, even as you mentioned, what I was going to say is, as you mentioned Mamdani, like one of the things that I saw mentioned about him in the context of Catherine Connolly's election, or maybe mentioned about Catherine Connolly in the context of Mamdani, either or, chicken and egg, is that, it symbolises people turning to hope and all this sort of stuff. I can't remember who it was wrote the column that I'm talking about, but, turning to hope and rising up and voting for the left en masse and everything else. And when I read this, all I can think of is the fact that, New York has gone from having a Democrat mayor to having a Democrat mayor. Yeah. Ireland has gone from having a socialist president for 14 years to a socialist president for at least the next 7, probably the next 14 if we're being realistic. If Fine Gael manages and Fianna Fáil both manage to hold on to power for the next 7 years, the likelihood is they'll pull the same stunt they did in 2018 and just jump in behind this incumbent, no matter the degree to which she spends the next 7 years insulting them. They will swallow that and just jump in behind her. So I don't know. I don't see the same degree of left-wing hope and optimism and everything else that some others seem to see in this. As much as anything else, and this is why I was kind of talking about the inauguration yesterday. In the course of that dirty campaign in the lead up to the election that you were talking about, specifically the pre-campaign, I suppose, the nomination element, we learned, courtesy of Maria Steen's handbag, that it is now acceptable to pass remarks on the manner in which female politicians dress and everything else. And so I was very interested yesterday. It didn't take very long for the information to come out, but the outfit that President Connolly, which is a phrase I loathe, but anyway, respect where it's due, that President Connolly was wearing yesterday, a Louise Kennedy ensemble, lovely blouse, big long purple jacket, all very imperial Roman. I'm an ancient Roman enjoyer.
Good. I think about it every day, Killian. Don't know about you.
Well, put it there, Barry. Ave. No, the outfit that she was wearing from Louise Kennedy, I think it costs in the region, if we were to go and buy it without tailoring or anything, and I would need it tailored, I need it expanded, about €5,100.
Yeah.
Which is an extraordinary amount of money to spend on clothing. What's more is, funny enough, I think I saw someone else say that you could actually get it for about 14,000 shekels if you wanted, because they also, that company exports to Israel. So there were no kefias or anything anymore, you know. You support indigenous Irish industry, even if it goes against the very fibre of your being, you know, in Catherine's case. But what's more then is the banquet then that they all had last night, because I woke up, I realise I'm ranting a little bit at the moment.
That's fine.
Bear with me.
I'm enjoying it.
Good. I woke up this morning, my Instagram was full of these sort of minor politicians and apparatchiks and everything else who had somehow finagled their way into Dublin Castle last night to enjoy this banquet. 2,000 people or something, I believe. Certainly that was the number in 2018. And the cost in 2018 was about €100,000 to put on this meal for these people. And it just, for whatever reason, when I saw...
And that's just for the chicken, for the Fianna Fáilers.
Exactly, yeah. Well, what's more...
In a basket.
What's more, though, is that that's what it was in 2018. Inflation, everything else since then. I was talking to someone else earlier on today who suggested that it could easily be 50% higher than that. It could have been 150 grand this time. All, as you said, to keep Fianna Fáil people in chicken, to make sure that Gerard Crockwell doesn't have to buy his own snack box last night. And it makes me realise... You know, this is the year that Brother Kevin Crowley died. Obviously, the Caption Day Centre does fantastic work in Dublin's inner city for the poor and the homeless. Their budget in 2023, I think, for a full year's worth of meals for the homeless of Dublin, which is a number that's only going up, was about €387,000.
Yeah.
And by contrast, we're spending €100,000 at least in one night to feed and wine and dine the great and the good of this country, ambassadors, the whole lot.
It's a new socialist movement, Killian. It's a new one.
Now,
and socialism runs on its stomach.
It does, exactly.
I'm only kidding.
But you're at the same, like, it's entirely, I think it's a legitimate point to make. All throughout this campaign, we've had talk of, I think even in her speech...
but everyone should be able to eat like that, Killian. You see?
They should, the same as your lecturer with their mansion.
That's the argument. That's the argument. And look, I mean, it's just... Yeah. It's a bit rich. Let's just call it what it is. It's a bit rich coming out with stuff like that, you know? And look, I mean, best of luck to them. In my new show, I go back to Arthur Griffith, who wanted a dual monarchy. You know, he was the founder of Sinn Féin. Probably very different to what a Sinn Féiner would be like today. But, you know, he believed in a dual monarchy. You know, we had a kind of a relate. Now, in his sense, it would be the King of England would still be the de facto King of Ireland. So we're only going back to Henry Grattan, which was the Kingdom of Ireland. My proposal is that we get a new, we get a whole new royal family, and we do away with the presidency altogether. It's a terrible old waste of time. Right. People love visiting.
The House of Cullivan, would it be?
Well, no Irish person need apply. No, because whatever happens to us, it doesn't matter how good looking the person is. 7 generations down, they do end up looking like Marty Morrissey. Sorry, Marty. So. What I figured out was there is one royal family in Europe at the moment that we could tap to be the Irish royal family. Prince Albert of Monaco. His mother was Grace Kelly, one of the most beautiful women in Ireland, and he and his descendants, I think, would be a pretty good choice. He has lots of descendants, and I think that they're people.
Sorry, that took me a second. Of course, it's a lot of descendants.
You invite them here. every time you inaugurate a new king, it's in the newly re-roofed castle. Because I don't know why we have so many castles in Ireland with no roofs on them.
No.
I've no understanding as to how Henry VIII...
Kilkenny is well maintained.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty good castle. But how did Henry VIII and Cromwell have the last say on most Irish medieval architecture? I say put a roof back on castle, turn it into a great wedding venue for my band, the Camembert Quartet. CamembertQuartet.com for all your wedding needs. Listen, there's no hotels left since we're using them for lots of other purposes. So we need to have more wedding venues and more hotels. And I think for tourism and for us, I think it would be a good thing. We had kings in this country till the 1500s, so I think we could go back to that. I know it's very anti-republican, but I cannot stand. There's something weird about a republic. The constitutional monarchies are meant to be the most stable nations, right? There's something odd about a republic also turning around to elect its most. We're all meant to be a republic of equals, and yet we spend all this time electing. I am the most equal. I am more equal than the rest of you. It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know. I think it's arguable a lot of the royal houses in Europe that were worth having were kind of wiped out about 100 years ago. If we could find a Romanov now, give me a Romanov and make him the Tsar of Ireland.
No, I think also we need Monaco as well because it's a casino and we can start treating.
That's true.
But we need somewhere to put our money.
We do, I suppose.
Yeah, our American money, which is the most important thing, Killian.
Yeah, I think did I read somewhere? I have a friend who's very into this sort of stuff, a staunch monarchist and a firm believer that I think it's some Franz of Bavaria or something like that.
Yeah.
He's about 104 years old or something like that, but he's the rightful heir to the throne of Ireland.
He would be a descendant of James II.
Would he?
Something like that, yeah, Jacobite.
Oh, he'd be one of them.
One of them who was defeated by William of Orange. But you see, all of this stuff, I go into this in my show, and basically what I've done in I Can't Believe It's Not Ireland, which I toured in America in March. I'm touring the Murder Michael Collins in next April in America. But what I did with that show is I showed a realistic version of what a united Ireland will be. There will have to be checks and balances. There will have to be deals done. We will have to rejoin the Commonwealth because that keeps the link constitutionally for our loyalists with Britain. But then we also have access to a market of 55 countries, 33 of which are republics. We're already in an EU, which is 26 countries with 12 monarchies in it. So monarchy can't be the reason that we don't want to be part of the Commonwealth. I believe it'll help us. I think it'll give us will be like a duty-free shop, very good economically for us. And I think that idea of a monarchy as well is something that we can do. New flag, a whole new infrastructural system. High-speed rail is what this country needs very, very badly. I mean, I got the train up from Kilkenny and 3 carriages, standing room only. It was crazy. And I just thought this is not right. It should take 15 minutes to get from Kilkenny to Dublin.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, you left on Sunday, I presume. So really, we were lucky that you got up here in time for this.
Well, yeah, but I mean, look, I'm trying to balance all of these things and say that, guys, this whole new movement you think you have, this whole new international socialist movement that's looking very much back to the 60s, it makes Britpop look fresh. Okay, it really is deathly dull, and it always leads to the same thing: 3-day weeks and crashes and rubbish. We have to look to the future. The future's where it's at, technologically, all the rest of it. The American money in this country is what keeps it running. So we just, I'm not saying we have to be slavish, and have the old fiddles and the red carpet out like we did for the Donald. I did like that though. And but you have to at least be a little bit more diplomatic. I just find Ireland has gone into this diplomatic dead end where it just thinks it can say anything. It's like the person that comes into a party and just starts roaring and shouting at the host.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are diplomatic, I suppose, in our own way. I say we as though I've ever set foot in Ivy House, which I haven't. I feel like I know it because of the House of Guinness, but I've never been there. But we're diplomatic in all the wrong areas, I suppose. We appeal to entirely the wrong people. We do our best to befriend Iran. We bring the then vice premier or vice president or whatever the bloody title is of China, Xi Jinping, back in 2012. Bring him to, they hit a few slitters around in Croke Park and name a calf or a goat or something after him, which I'm sure has long since died, but he's still on the go. And those are the people that we seem to want to appeal to, people who have, horrendous human rights abuses going on in their countries. Meanwhile, others who, for whatever reason, the likes of RTE and the Irish Times and the very bien pensant dinner parties of South Dublin have taken a dislike to in the likes of America and elsewhere. No, we can't send them, we can't touch them. And yet, even forgetting all that, even if you actually do prefer Xi Jinping's morals to the likes of Donald Trump, actually one of those is probably more beneficial to us than the other. And I don't know, it doesn't make much sense to me. It's real. I loathe the term, really and truly, student union politics. It's a little bit cliched, but actually here it's quite fitting. It is absolutely.
It is fitting. Yeah. Yes. And as a half American, I mean, I used to drive my Sinn Féin friends mad by saying I'm an Irish Republican and an American Republican, and they just couldn't get it because if you're Irish, you're meant to be a Democrat. But it's not how I see. Two different systems and modes require two different types of governance, And in America, where it's not as, the safety net is not as apparent as in Ireland, you need someone who's good with the books and the money and the economy. That's just how it works for me. Okay, so America has done extraordinary strides in terms of socialistic programs and all of these types of things. They really do. But you need Republicans running the place because the other thing is it's too risky. You know what I'm saying? Now, that said, I couldn't stand George Bush. I was always a Democrat all my life. But I mean, also we grew up, I was over in America a lot and we kind of grew up with Donald Trump. And I find it kind of funny how people have turned him into Hitler. We knew him as the real estate guy who was in Home Alone and then, did The Apprentice. So all of a sudden he's turned from a hotelier into Hitler. In fact, I always say to people, you seem to be misspelling or mispronouncing the word hotelier and saying Hitler instead. And he kind of runs America like a hotel, I
suppose, yeah. Well, certainly I saw over the week again, the White House has been, it seems, just layered in, I presume, gold leaf and not solid gold. But they've got this new presidential walk of fame. And a gradually declining level of photos going back to George Washington or whatever.
Yeah.
A picture of every president as they were president. So there's two of Trump, because obviously there was a gap in his presidencies. That gap, according to the Presidential Wall of Fame, is filled by an auto pen.
I know.
Just a picture of it with the name Joe Biden under it.
It's so mean.
He doesn't let stuff go.
No, he doesn't. But it's. He's a narrow nationalist like myself, so he believes in America doing well, and I've always believed that you take care of the house, and you take care of the village, and you take care of the city, and you take care of the country. It makes total sense to me. You know what I mean? But he's not an isolationist the way people think he is. He's quite how would I put it? Very decisive with international relations.
Well, I'm sure Nigeria and Venezuela don't feel particularly isolated from the US at the moment with all the saber rattling going on there. I saw today that Gerald R. Ford, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is steaming towards Venezuela, and they're revving up their Model Ts to go out and confront it.
Yeah, I know. The only thing I will say to all my Sinn Féin friends there's no point me giving out about Sinn Féin because I still like a lot of them personally and all the rest of it. And I also think Fine Gael need a complete overhaul and Fianna Fáil. Fianna Fáil don't even know what they are anymore. No. I always think that Fine Gael and Sinn Féin are like two sides of the same coin. They're both quite nationalistic. They're both quite hardcore about what they believe in. Fianna Fáil, sorry to say it, and I come from a Fianna Fáil, they'd ride anything. Let's just put it that way. But the one thing I would always say to all these people about all of their beliefs and all of it, having gone through all the historical research I've had to go through, you have to decide what world you want to live in. And the Western world, despite all its faults, is still the closest to, not perfection, because we'll never attain perfection, but it's the closest one to, ideal. And we have to remember that Western world is what defeated Hitler and eventually defeated Soviet Russia, And you have to decide, I see an awful lot of Iran love, you know what I mean? But it's not love for the people of Iran, it's love for this regime, which is not representative as far as I can see.
The love for it, not the regime.
Yeah, but people need to decide, you have to figure out, do I want to live in a world where America is number one in the world? Or would I rather be run by a world? What would a world run like Russia be like? What would a world run like China be like? What would a world run by Iran be like? I can guarantee you nobody in Dunleary Rathdown would like it.
No.
You know?
No.
And this is my issue, is that people seem to want to always attack something, little realizing they're bolstering something that's far worse if it ever attained the same level of influence or power. And I'm not disrespecting any of these countries. I mean, Russia's one of the most incredible cultures of all time. You know, Iran, one of the oldest countries in the world. China, incredible for all sorts of reasons. But I don't want them running the world.
No.
And they would never have invented rock and roll, Killian, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. No, in Russia in particular, it is a bit of a tragedy. I was there myself years and years ago, only for
Communist.
an overnight. No, I was there as I don't know, what age was I, 16 or 17, I suppose. We went there on a very brief holiday as part of a bigger holiday, but we went to St. Petersburg, got into the Hermitage Museum, saw an awful lot of extraordinary culture, and we were tailed for a lot of the time we were there by this very, very skinny little fellow with one of these comically large hats.
Yeah.
And yeah, it occurred to me in the last year that it's unlikely that I'll be able to go back there for a very long time at least, which is a shame, because it is a beautiful country. It's just a shame the way its leadership is behaving. But you mentioned the likes of Russia, Iran, China. The other news story of the week, I suppose, is this COP30 stuff that's going on down in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. I was surprised actually to see Micheál Martin was at the inauguration. He seemed to get back from his speech down there in time. And I was wondering, did you look into COP at all? Have you paid attention to any of the stories? Or
no,
what do you think of it generally? Because I think it's a bit ridiculous at this stage.
Yeah, well, it was funny. The show I did where I did all these songs from the last 25 years, like one of the songs I did was from the Camembert Quartet's second album, which is called We Came to Rock, We Came to Roll, We Came to Rock and Roll and and fill in the blanks. And basically it was, because at the time I was so irritated with bands, and this is 2004, banging on about stuff that had nothing to do with music or the fun of music or any of the rest of it. And of course we've recently seen that at festivals everywhere. We're now, music festivals are now political rallies. And kind of devastatingly badly so. And in this song, like I had lyrics like, I was listening to the radio when an indie band came on. They were crying like tools about fossil fuels. Man, the singer just went on and on. Well, man, I guess nobody told you your CDs are made of plastic. So if you want to help, please don't release any more LPs. In fact, that would be fantastic. So, and then another verse was about a protest march against globalization. Now, this song is 21 years old. So we've been talking about this environment thing for 21 years. We've been told at various times that the world would end on date after date after date after date. Now, I can't stand pollution. I can't stand any of that. I hate the idea of a plastic island in the middle of the Pacific or any of that stuff. But we have to get a little bit more real about this stuff. And there has been very good environmentalists like Alan Savory who say if you graze cattle on the edges of deserts, you eventually will make green pasture again. We know that the amount of whatever is in the atmosphere is creating a warmer Earth, but the Earth is also compensating by stuff growing 10 times faster and reforestation and greening and things like this. I mean, all of this stuff is, I just think it's eminently doable. And I think this doom-mongering and scaring of people, I think is really negative. And again, it comes, again, it's a religion that so many people have taken on worldwide. And their method of convincing people, a bit like with recent events and a bit like COVID and a bit like all of these other things I'm talking about, is to literally lambast people from the pulpit and tell them you have no heart if you don't care about this and you've no this if you don't do that. Where's your humanity? And I'm saying, well, my humanity is based in I want realism to take over and I want us to find solutions to things. Some of these people don't want to find solutions, Killian. I mean, one great character I go through in my history shows is Daniel O'Connell, who was so enraged by Wellington giving him Catholic emancipation that, he roared and shouted at him, And why was O'Connell enraged about getting his lifelong, the thing he was ambitious for his whole life? Because then he would not have nothing to fight for anymore. And he moved on to repeal. My joke is, what do you never give an activist? What they want. Because activists and people who call themselves activists are fighting for something. I found it really extraordinary when I was doing my show in the United Ireland that I got half the audience I got for anything I did about the past. The Irish wanted to talk about their miserable past and how the Brits had hurt us and la 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 la. But when I had an optimistic, futuristic thing about a future utopia where we have to kind of take all this stuff on the chin and forget a lot of crap, nobody wants to hear it.
No.
You know?
No.
And it's like with colonialism, guys, you're going to have to get over it. It's just the way of the world. Okay?
Even on that point, I saw you mentioned, that a lot of these people who run these things, they just want to blame people and talk down to them and all that sort of thing. But I think that they really, a lot of the time, they blame the wrong people, So, for example, we all saw the horrible hurricane that struck Jamaica. I can't think of the name of it now, but that struck Jamaica in particular the other week. And I saw some UK Labour MP come out and say that the West owes Jamaica reparations for creating the storm effectively. And now we have COP going on this week. And so I looked into the statistics a little bit because Micheál Martin went down there. And Ireland, I believe, is responsible for about 0.13% of global emissions. Now, how much of that percentage was generated by his flight to and from Brazil, I don't know. Probably, a larger chunk than his fair share. Yeah. But by contrast, the EU, and I have to look at my figures here, I'm afraid, but the EU is responsible for about 6%. Sorry, it was responsible for 6%. It is now responsible for... No, still 6%. And actually, you mentioned the monarchy. The King of Sweden mentioned that over the week. When he was out hunting or something, happened to mention how, what's the EU supposed to do in all this? We're responsible for such a tiny proportion. By contrast, China is responsible for 32% of global emissions at the moment. And they're not in Brazil. Nobody has been sent there as far as I know. Xi Jinping certainly didn't show up in the same way as Micheál Martin did. The US is responsible for 11%. They're not going. India is responsible for 8%. They're not going. And so instead, we've got Ireland, 0.13% of global emissions. We're flying down there. We're going to have our say. If Ireland pulled an Atlantis in the morning and sank into the sea, wouldn't make a jot of difference to the global climate situation. And yet the people who actually can make a difference, particularly China, no sign of them. And that's blaming the wrong people. And will anybody say boo to China about this? Absolutely not. Open as many coal plants as you want. Meanwhile, Ireland, that cow, gotta go. So the idea of cow emissions being the worst evil on the planet, when this is how that was this country's family business for 10,000 years. So we're still around 10,000 years later. Absolutely. You know what I mean? We did an awful lot of deforestation and the rest of it possibly for that. But look, it is. I don't want Micheál Martin paddling down either. I'm a bit like, even when you talked about the 100,000 quid banquet dinner and stuff like that, I'm kind of like, but it is the presidential banquet. Like, we do have to spend a bit of money in these areas. You know what I mean? But it is a bit. I know what you're saying, that in terms of emissions, if emissions are the real issue. My cynicism about the environmental thing is not from some scientific superior knowledge. It's not because I'm anti-woke and all the rest of it. And again, the problem with the woke thing and the identity politics thing is it decided to lecture and lambast people. And that doesn't convince anybody. You literally turn entire generations against you. I could see a younger generation come up who won't be at all woke, which would be hilarious. When they come up against 50-year-old woke people and whatever happens. Whatever woke even means anymore, Killian. But what I'm saying is... It's a bit like that Stu June in politics thing. It's a term I'm starting to resent.
I'm resenting it, because there's loads of things we can be politically correct about, and there's things I believe in our night. And I like the idea of people being nice to each other. The one thing I don't like about the whole thing is that it's people hectoring and barracking each other. Like I just delete posts on Facebook now. If I put something up funny.
You still use Facebook?
Yeah. And I have old friends, but they're all curmudgeonly musicians who are now curmudgeonly musicians who want to fight battles on their armchairs. And I'm like,
I check my 4 or 5 happy birthdays every year, and that's about it.
That's fair enough. Yeah, but I won't even use Twitter anymore because it's so aggressive and horrible. Instagram is a bit the nicest place you can exist. Don't get me started on TikTok. But what I mean is, if these things are truly a problem and truly an issue, and the desire for self-preservation is stronger than that of, I'll just make my money in my lifetime now and I'll leave nothing for my kids. Like that's not really how governments think, particularly a government like China. So there has to be something in it that they don't think that it's a real thing. I believe the environment can be getting changed from a lot of things, including human stuff. But there's something about the Earth that I just don't think we can have that much of an impression on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree. Like you were mentioning earlier on, I think I look at the whole thing in.
Now we did only discover oil in the 1900s, and we did only do this, and that stuff is.
Yeah, but we had coal before then.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be tough to shovel that into your car as you're driving along. So certainly oil is more portable.
I want an answer to whether detonating 2,000 nuclear warheads over 50 years had any impact on the atmosphere. For some reason, scientists want to tell us how cow farts have done this. But we did detonate 2,000 nuclear warheads, testing-wise, over 45 years.
But we got Godzilla films out of that, so it's somewhat...
which is fair enough, yeah. But I'm just saying, did that have any effect? And if it didn't, then nothing we can do can have any effect.
Exactly. But funnily enough, it goes the opposite way as well. I think I read recently that the ozone layer, remember that thing?
Yeah.
The thing that meant that we couldn't throw out our fridges in particular ways, and... Lynx became the ultimate baddie when it came to all this stuff.
Yes.
Because of the chlorofluorocarbons or something. I'm
Yeah.
sure someone will correct me on that if I'm.
And Lynx is doing better than ever.
They are, exactly, and good for them, says I. But the
made young men from down the country smell nice in the disco.
Exactly, particularly after Christmas, and I'm looking forward to getting my
your Lynx gift set.
Exactly. But no, the ozone layer, which was so damaged for so long, is apparently now healing itself at a rate that was greater than expected, and in a way that's actually a little bit dangerous to us. As in, by the time the ozone layer heals, which will be much sooner than we expected, it will start overcompensating again, and that will also start hurting us. So we just can't get this right.
No, we can't get it right, and with the Arctic chill about to come in to get us. But so this is why, again, this anti-modernism, this anti-development, this anti-technocratic thing I feel it's a problem, because one of the most spectacular things I saw was the rescue of the astronauts from space and brought back by a rocket, but also Musk's rocket that went into the air and he was able to grab it back. And this for the first time has allowed us to make vehicles that can go and do heavy lifting. And we can bring it back to Earth. We're at the
exciting.
It's exciting, which means we can mine the moon, or we can mine an asteroid, or we can do whatever. This is where we have to go. There's only one direction we can go. We're never going back to the buffalo roaming on the American plains. We're never going back to whatever. We can't reverse the colonies anywhere. So just get with it, and spend less than 23 hours a day giving out about Elon Musk and just saying. And I know he antagonizes people, but let him get on with that work, because that's the work that needs to be done.
Have you heard about this 3-eye atlas? Does
No.
that ring a bell? No? It's this, I don't know, I'm not an astrophysicist, but some sort of a meteorite anyway that's after entering our solar system.
Okay.
But the remarkable thing about it, apparently, I didn't realize this until very recently, but apparently the planets... all of us are on a sort of the same plane as we orbit around the sun, and very unusually this meteorite is after entering the solar system roughly on that very same plane, which has led a Harvard professor to opine that this might be extraterrestrial, as in alien. It's massive, it's 20 kilometers wide or something like that. They're waiting for it to pass in front of a few stars so they can learn more about it based on the amount of light it obscures and everything else. But we could be in for a shock before long. It's going to come close to Earth in December sometime, I think.
Okay.
And so there are a couple of boffins who are afraid that we're being spied on.
Well, I'd welcome our new
alien
overlords if they were able to build a metro from Dublin to the airport. That if they could just get that done.
You think Kang Kodos would manage that? I think they'd circumvent Ireland's civil service?
Well, I'm hoping that the only thing that will defeat Ireland's civil service could be an alien invasion. That's possibly the only thing that could do it.
Why would they invade Ireland, though, realistically?
Well, the problem...
Easy pickings, maybe.
Yeah, but the only problem is then, you know what had happened? They'd head to Temple Bar and they'd head down the country and they'd see the charms of Doolin and they'd be drinking pints and going, we were going to invade the rest of the place, and now Jesus, here we are. And, sure, she's a lovely girl over there. And then the aliens become more Irish than the Irish themselves.
Absolutely. Well, this is what our flags are for. Anti-alien hatred, forcing, fueling erections, of flags.
If they could build us some high-speed rail, that'd be nice. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, look, Paddy, it has been great chatting to you. I appreciate that. It's a good note to finish on.
I hope it was worth it. Yes.
It was, of course.
Yes, we went from the dawn of time to our final alien invasion. It's great. Thank you.
Exactly. Well, who knows? I mean, maybe we'll have that to talk about by the next time you come in, and you will be back in.
I would love to be in, yes. And go to paddycullivan.com for all my works and my shows. I will be doing a tour in America in April. And it's so funny, but when I was in America in March and I came back after 2 weeks, and everyone's like, "Oh, Jesus, what's it like with Trump running the place?" And I was like, it's about what's Ireland like with Simon Harris sitting in a building over there.
Exactly.
It's just the same place. It's a great place, and it's fine. We'll be fine, Killian. How's that for a nice hopeful
I was going to say, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, look, on that note, thank you as ever very much for joining us for this episode. I should have said it last time, but I'm saying it this time. Please like, subscribe, share if you feel like it, comment, all the rest of it. We appreciate the engagement, and we'll see you next time.